Agriculture is a huge sector in this province, adding billions to the province's economy, and even more importantly, feeding us. With us on how farmers are faring as they bring in this year's harvest, in Thunder Bay, Ontario, dairy farmer Peggy Brekveld, who is president of the Ontario Federation of Agriculture. And in Guelph, Ontario, Sara Epp, assistant professor in the Rural Planning and Development Program at the University of Guelph. Hello to you both.
Hi.
Hello.
Peggy, I want to start with you. What are farmers most concerned with right now?
Well, to be fully honest, we're just concerned, can we get the crops off? Is the rain ever going to stop? And I think most farmers find that the critical mass of today and this season. Outside of that, we are concerned about the pressure on farmland and trying to preserve it. We are concerned about the cost of inputs and interest and fertilizer, et cetera, as we try to make a living. And we are always concerned about, do we have enough people to help us get the work done that needs to be done?
Well, you mentioned the pressure on farmland from the 2021 Census of Agriculture. It showed Ontario is losing 319 acres of farmland, and that's daily. Can you
That's right.
help put this into context for us?
Absolutely. That looks like 75,000 carrots or 25,000 apples. Or if your evening includes a glass of wine, it's about 1.2 million bottles of VQA wine and about 58 city blocks, I believe.
And you're putting in that context to help us understand that when that farmland goes, so do those products that we rely on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's a lot of pressure there. I think people sometimes forget that when you look way back where cities were first established, they actually looked for food, water, and shelter. And so some of our best farmland is actually where the major cities are in this province. Toronto, you used to look from the CN Tower and see the majority of the class 1 and 2, the best farmland. And now when you sit at the top of the CN Tower or stand at the top, you pretty much see city. And slowly but surely, you lose the farmland that actually feeds the people that live in that city.
Sara, help us understand this a bit more. I think the percentage of farmable land in this province is 5%. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's around that. And Peggy's absolutely right. The best of the farmland that we want for absolutely for farming purposes is in those places where we see the greatest development pressure. So in southern Ontario, there's absolutely pockets of soil fantastic in northern Ontario for agriculture. But the bulk of that soil and the ideal climate is what we see in the southern part of the province. And that's where we see the majority of these urban land use conversions happening. And sort of it's a sacrificial land in some ways for development, the best farmland.
Well, explain that more a little bit. What are the key causes for this farmland loss?
So it's very much focused on urban development pressures. We know the province, I think over the next 20 years, is going to get 4 to 5 million more people. So we absolutely know we need a place for people to go. We need homes. If anybody read the Affordability Housing Task Force report, we absolutely know we have a housing crisis in Ontario right now. So one of the solutions is to build more homes, which absolutely makes sense. The challenge is the easiest thing to build on is farmland, and it's green space. It's really easy to bulldoze over the vineyards that Peggy mentioned, or just to pull up those carrots and put a subdivision down. And because it's easy and it's cost effective, and in some ways, it's very easy to say from a development perspective, here's where we should continue to develop. We should continue to sprawl out. Let's continue with the trend in Ontario, which is that sort of low density suburban sprawl that we see that has consumed thousands and tens of thousands of hectares of land within the province. And we see that continuing today. And it's not something that's necessarily going to slow down because we know that population growth is continuing.
Well, the province has a lot to juggle, right? We know that the pandemic kind of pushed into the spotlight the lack of affordable housing. A lot of people who lived in the cities in southwestern Ontario moved out, driving up the cost of housing in other places. But I want to know from both of you, and Peggy, I'll start with you. How much of this farmland loss has to do with poor urban planning?
Well, I think I'm going to switch your question around and talk a little bit about what kind of solutions could there be. And one of them is really good, effective, long-term urban planning. Every time we build in and up every time we renew and review downtown cores, we have the opportunity to actually protect farmland, and actually makes lots of sense inside of the urban footprint as well. Your transit lines make more sense. Your infrastructure makes more sense. I build less roads that I have to maintain. I put in less sewer systems, or less lights that I have to uphold and keep going. Um, those types of things, as well as you build livable and complete communities when you think inside of the urban footprint. And when you think inside of the urban footprint, you actually protect farmland outside of that, and that's going to feed your city and continue to do that for generations.
And Sarah, I think a lot of us might not have that in mind about what's happening with the loss of this farmland and how it's going to impact us. I think a lot of these things we find out later when we can't really reverse course. So I'll ask you this question. How much of this farmland loss has to do with poor urban planning?
I would say poor urban planning is challenging because a lot of the decisions and a lot of the development we see happening today, still to this date, is based on decisions made decades ago. And so the nature of planning is it's supposed to forecast 30 years out. That's our goal, is to be aspirational and have all these incredible plans that are predicting the future and planning for the future. And so one of the challenges is that a lot of the land we're developing today are based on previous decisions that today we look at and think that's ludicrous. Why would we keep paving over this farmland? But those decisions were made 5, 10, 20, in some cases 40 years ago, and we're just seeing the impacts of those decisions play out now, which means we're kind of at an exciting time right now where we can change that course. We can stop this decision making of urban boundary expansions where we allow farmland to come into an urban boundary because we know eventually we may need that land, and look to, as Peggy said, look within those urban areas. Let's build up, which is always a triggering word or triggering phrase. Build up. We don't want to build out anymore. Intensification, densities, these are all words that get a lot of people very upset. But we do need to reflect on that and look at that within our urban boundaries. Rural communities have urban boundaries as well. Look within those and find those opportunities, because those decisions that we're making today are going to likely be catastrophic in 30 years because we don't really understand those long-term impacts.
And Peggy, you mentioned you wanted to look at solutions. Is there an example you can give us of a town or a city in Ontario that's actually doing it right?
Yeah, actually, Waterloo has done a really good job of focusing on how do we stay inside of our footprint. They actually have one road that you can see. This is the countryside, the farms, and this is the city. And I think it includes conversations about what kind of housing do we actually need now. 40 years ago, when some of the goals or assessments were made, we were looking at a lot of large families. They needed large single detached dwellings. More and more people today, they need a home for 1 or 2 people. You need student housing. You need more and more seniors at very small units. Condos and such are a way forward. Waterloo has redesigned and renewed buildings. They put commercial on the bottom and put condos on top. They have what's called the Pearl Necklace. And so at each transit station stop, you see an increase in housing, and then you see the next increase around the next one. So you see that going through the city. You can actually see it on their landscape. And they have put on people's deeds that the current house, perhaps a single detached dwelling, is there. And when you buy it, on there is a note that says, should you ever want to make changes here, this is going to become, we have made plans to put in multiplexes or more than one family dwelling on that lot. So they are very much looking forward. What can we do?
And Sarah, is the green belt sufficient for farmland to protect
It's sufficient for it's sufficient for farmland in the areas it is right now. We have seen, with a colleague, Wayne Caldwell, we did a very long study from 2000 to 2017, which we're now going into 2021 with, looking at farmland loss within the Greenbelt to see if the Greenbelt worked. And it has. It's done exactly what it's supposed to have done up until about 2017 to where our data goes. But there's so much more prime agricultural land outside of that area that isn't protected. So if you're within the Greenbelt area, yes, there are very strong policies that protect that land currently, and municipalities are respectful of those. It comes to the province to change those rules. But there's land outside of that that's just as good that doesn't have protection. So if we're looking at the Greenbelt, it's doing a good job. But what about the land that isn't protected, where we potentially see leapfrog development happening because we can go to these areas where we don't have that really strong policy in place?
As we mentioned before, 5 5% is not a very large number. If Ontario keeps losing farmable land to urban development, do you see a scenario where we have to rely on other countries for food? Peggy?
Well, I think there is always a concern about where our food comes from, and it should be. We should desire to buy some of the best quality food there is in Ontario. We do export a lot, but in an export market, you are at the mercy of a market, and geopolitical events, climate change, and climate events such as severe drought in certain countries. When the Ukraine happened, the Ukraine war started, we actually saw the price of sunflower oil skyrocket. And we heard a lot of people say, where is the wheat that's going to feed Northern Africa going to come from? Canada has the opportunity. We grow more food than we actually need as citizens. We have, I think, the opportunity, but also the responsibility in a larger global market and global context to feed more people than we currently have inside of Ontario.
But don't we already rely on imports here, Peggy?
Imports do come in, but we actually export more than we import in Canada.
And Sarah, I think during the pandemic, a lot of us got really nervous about access to food. And, I started doing my urban farming in my backyard. Do you think there is a disconnect for people who are not part of the farming community, who just you go to the store, it's there, and if it's not there, then you go pick something else, and if that's not there, that's when you get upset?
Yeah, I think there's a huge disconnect we see the stickers all the time, farmers feed cities, and that's fantastic and it's accurate, but I still don't know that we recognize the impacts of that and the impacts of when we don't have farmers, what that looks like in our grocery stores, if that's where we're buying predominantly our food from, and the cost that's likely going to be attached. We hear right now how terrible the food costs are. That's going to get worse if we aren't supplying ourselves as much domestically as possible. And you're right, we already do have imports coming in. So we know that even during peach season, you'll find peaches from the US in our markets. And so it's a matter of really educating the public of where their food comes from and how they can support farmers through their purchasing decisions on a daily basis.
Every time I hear peaches, I think of the Justin Bieber song. I'm like, you're getting peaches from Georgia? Hi, missed opportunity to promote Ontario. But, he's learning. Peggy, you mentioned fertilizer earlier. The Ontario government has earmarked $2 million for a Made in Ontario fertilizer solution. Why are investments like this so important?
It's one of the major inputs for farmers as they look at their operations. We need to feed the plants and feed the soil. And so farmers they take soil samples, they look at the nutrients they can put on if they have livestock, what that will look like and how that will help the plant. And then they use synthetic fertilizers to balance that. This year with the war on the Ukraine, we saw the tariffs go on to, Canadian tariffs go on to the fertilizer coming from Russia. And it affected Eastern Canada, basically up to the Ontario border, because beyond that, Western Canada can source from other places. So we saw the price rise significantly. The answer that the Ontario government has provided is that continued research into new and innovative research and development of products that will help us continue to reduce emissions and use fertilizer effectively. Farmers already want to do that and do that because the cost of fertilizer is so high, but the funds announced we're pretty happy with because they are one solution to trying to ensure we can continue to grow the food that we do.
Another important link for development to happen is MZOs. Sarah, can you explain to us what those are?
Yeah, so MZOs are ministerial zoning orders, which essentially sort of skip the public consultation process, and it's the provincial government through the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing making decisions on local planning matters. They are controversial, to say the least, because it does skip that local planning decision, and they've been criticized heavily lately as a way for development potentially to skip that local process and get approval from the provincial government and just push development through without the right consultation or review. And there are a number of situations in the province where we've seen that happen on farmland, including prime agricultural land, so the best soil we have, getting pushed through large development applications through the province that have skipped that local planning authority.
Well, Peggy, I think one of the arguments that the province has made is that we have to move faster. The housing is so unaffordable in this province. It's having a ripple effect on everything. So how do you balance those two things?
Preserving farmland and a housing strategy don't have to be opposites. In fact, it's a case of that if we look at our precious resources, we tend to value them and treat them special and different. We're saying to the province, there's lots of opportunities to build houses and create more homes inside of the urban footprint, looking at other land choices, but we do need to protect the farmland. How are we going to feed people if we pave it all over? Because once it's in pavement, it never goes back. Even in communities such as mine, Thunder Bay, my grandmother remembers where the farms actually started way back about halfway through the city at the Waterloo corner. There's a KFC there now. I personally remember where there was farmland and chicken farm, a very large chicken farm, probably about 10 kilometers away, and it's all houses and development. We didn't build in and up. But we now have a lot of infrastructure. Talk to Thunder Bay. We have a lot of roads to maintain. We have a lot of street lights and sewer lines that we have to maintain because we continue to sprawl out and we lost farmland in the process.
Well, Peggy, you're a dairy farm. Oh, Sarah, I'll come right back to you. You're a dairy farmer in Northern Ontario. How different are the pressures faced by farmers in the north as opposed to the south?
So I do believe that the best, I'm going to be straight up, the best farmland is in that GTA area. Class 1 and 2 is down there. Northern Ontario has excellent opportunities for canola, for grains, for beef production, etc. Class 3, 4, 5, we are farming on, but your best farmland's in the south. The pressures in the north, yeah, we can still grow a little bit of farmland. There's still a little bit under trees, but overall, that pressure's still there. On our own farm, we had 45 acres that they have now divided into 3 housing lots, and that we can farm a portion of it now because not all the houses are built or developed yet, but we know that we're going to lose that farmland. And yeah, it's houses now. It becomes houses.
Sarah, I know you wanted to follow up.
I was going to note that the challenge and risk in all of this is called the death by 1,000 cuts. So as we sort of carve off a bit more farmland, and as Peggy said, she can still farm where she is, but it's going to be 3 houses, that slowly severing of farmland cuts off more and more of the farm. And eventually it makes that individual farm unattainable. You can't use it for anything anymore. And the greater risk is that it makes the farming system in that community useless, essentially, because you don't have the volume of agriculture, you don't have the services available, the infrastructure, the population. And so that death by 1,000 cuts really weakens the agricultural base. If we lose the land, agriculture is essentially null. And then beyond that, it also weakens the rural community, and the viability of many rural places is dependent on that agricultural base. And so it's interesting and frustrating to think of that death by 1,000 cuts where we have these small expansions that don't seem significant, but on the long term and taken together, they're quite an issue.
Peggy, World Mental Health Day is coming up on October 10th.
Yeah.
A recent study by the University of Guelph states that farmer mental health got worse during the pandemic. This study shows that 1 in 4 Ontario farmers contemplated suicide in the past 12 months. OFA has partnered with the Canadian Mental Health Association to introduce a farmer wellness initiative. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so the statistic you just said is pretty scary. Another one is 76% of farmers have self-identify as having moderate to high stress. And we live in an agriculture with a dash between. And the culture says, just keep going, keep working hard, never say die, never give up. We also live in homes and farms that are all one unit. So our family, our farms, our businesses, our animals, everything is in one place quite frequently. And so it's hard to get away. If a counselor says, well, just need a vacation, that doesn't seem like an option to a farmer who generally farms 24/7 to keep their animals healthy and safe, etc. And so the conversation is to encourage farmers to reach out and say, it's okay to say I'm not okay. And there are people that do understand what farming is. So you can call actually a toll-free number. It's 1-866 corn all is kind of the letters for it. But the goal is to say, farmers, don't be afraid to reach out if you're having trouble. The inflation, the interest rates, bad weather events, animal health, those are all stressors just on the farm. And then you have the ordinary stressors of family life and human health, etc. So it is a complicated life, but there is hope. And we often say hope sustains a farmer. Don't give up, reach out.
That's a great initiative. We only have about a minute left, and I'm going to try to squeeze in a couple questions. Sara, the municipal elections are coming up on October 24th. Given that municipalities are often the first place where land use zoning decisions are made, what would you like to see happen there?
I think just representation of the agricultural community at the councillor level, if possible, is critical. We know farmers are already outnumbered in the province and in many municipalities, but having that representation either of councillors who don't understand agriculture getting that knowledge and education base, or the farm community being a part of that municipal election, I think is critical to make sure an agricultural lens is brought to all decisions that are made at a local municipality. Regardless if they're planning issues, they're economic development issues, that agricultural lens is critical.
And Peggy, since most Ontarians don't come from farming backgrounds, what should voters be aware of when they cast their ballots?
Think long term. Think about where your food's going to come from, and think about how, if you build your city right, if you do long-term visioning of your city, you probably will make great decisions for your tax dollar and efficient use, but also protecting farmland. So farm and food forever.
And this weekend is a long weekend. Families are gathering. As we head into Thanksgiving weekend, what is one thing we can do to support local farmers? Sara, I'll start with you.
I'll maybe take the unpopular opinion and say, have the political conversation this weekend. Every family talks politics whether we want to or not. And I think this is a great opportunity to talk about the local elections and the role of farmers in agriculture. So push that complicated, difficult conversation.
And Peggy?
Look for Ontario produce, buy local, buy from the store with the Ontario symbol, Foodland Ontario symbol. It tastes great. 200 different products. You can find something that's made here at home.
And Peggy, on behalf of Ontarians, thank you so much for all the work that you farmers do for us, helping us healthy and having accessible food. We appreciate everything that you do. And thank you so much for Sara for giving us this insight as well. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.